Hey Internet, welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction, and why am I saying that when someone sent me this?
Welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction. Hi, Revfisk!
And, I really want more of this, lots more of this, as much more of this as you out there in internet land can come up with. Because frankly, you guys are equally as cool as I am, if not more so, because I'm really not that cool, and if you met me last week, you kind of figured that out, didn't you? Yeah, had a great time at the Concordia Catechetical Academy. It was a real blessing to be there. Looking forward to the next 2 weeks to being at higher things. A great youth gathering going on in both Maryville, Missouri, and Irvine, California. I know I will see some of you there. Meanwhile, today we are getting ready for this week's text, Gospel reading on Sunday, Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 43.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. IssuesETC.org.
Yeah, big chunk of text with really two stories going on in it. And the thing about this particular text, if you're a preacher, right, you're coming at this and you're looking for what can I give everybody that was different than what I gave them last week? How can I not preach the same sermon that I preached last week? And you kind of run into a little bit of trouble in Mark because what you keep having are these stories about Jesus healing people. It's like he heals this person, he heals that person, one disease, one demon, and then, this, that, and the other thing. And you're looking for that little kind of moralistic kind of thing, the way that little piece of rational knowledge you can give them that's above and beyond so they can go away feeling like, yeah, it was worth listening to the sermon this week. I grew in my faith because I know something I didn't know before, because now I have something I can go do. Well, Mark kind of hits all of this straight in the face and says, this is not what Christianity is about, guys. Christianity is about who Jesus is and what Jesus did, and so you're going to get to see who he is and what he did, even if it bores you to tears. And if it does bore you to tears, guess who the problem is about? It's not about him, because how can you be bored to tears with a guy who can walk into a crowd, have some woman touch his coat, and be healed of a 12-year flow of blood, and then go straight from there into a house where a girl just died and say, hey, lady, chica, can you get up, please? And she does. She rises from the dead. I mean, if that's boring, if that's not something to proclaim from the rooftops, that there was a guy in our history, a man just like me, only, way cooler, who could do these things, what is there to proclaim? You want to go see Brave? I mean, I saw Brave. It was a decent movie. It was okay movie. Hyper-feministic movie. But compare these two things together, I mean, they're not even the same ballpark. I mean, this is like junior high tennis versus pro. It's not in the same page. So you kind of have to wrestle with this a little bit in your own sin, your own flesh, that you might get bored with this amazing text because it's just so amazing that it stacks itself up and you're looking for a way to fit yourself into it and you're just not there. If anything, you're a woman with a flow of blood, or you are a dead little girl, which, don't go telling your friends you're a dead little girl. Right? So, I actually think there's more going on in the structure of Mark, but I must confess, as far as the four Gospels go, I don't have Mark down as much as I would like to, but I do think he's making a movement, and it has a lot to do with a couple of things, specifically the apostolic ministry, because they're just showing up left and right in this thing. It's all kind of leading to their sending out, as well as not so much his resurrection, but his cross, all these parables about the Word of God and the kingdom of God being not what you would think it is, looking weak, looking not able to completely do everything because the crow steals it or the weeds choke it out. And yet here he is. I mean, nothing can stand in this guy's way. What's he talking about? Weak. This guy's going to rule the world. See, but this is leading somewhere. This is leading to where he really is going to do what he came to do. He's going to do what he's been preaching he is going to do, which is not all of this powerful, authoritative action, but the passive giving up of his life as a sacrifice for the sins of the entire world. I'm not sure that's the language Mark would particularly use, sacrifice for the sins of the world. We'll discover that a little bit more as we go forward. But to be sure, are, it is at the cross, at the foot of the cross, that the only place where a human being, any human being in the entire book calls Jesus the Son of God, the only place where someone puts it together that all of this authority and purity and certainty that's taking place. I mean, he's healing people, he's calming storms, he's going to walk on water, he's going to feed 5,000 people with bread. No one says, maybe this guy's divine. No one says it until he dies. And then it's a pagan soldier who doesn't even know who he is says, surely this is the Son of God.
Truly this man was the Son of God.
I can't even begin to do, the delivery that he just did.
Truly this man was the Son of God.
But the point being, that's the only guy that gets it, right? And then the book of Mark kind of comes into play. So do the women walk away afraid, or do they actually get to see the resurrection? And how much of this is just left hanging on this soldier's confession of faith? Well, we're not going to get into all of that today, but it is pretty central to the whole thing. Today what you have is a story that is two stories, a bookended story about a little girl who is sick and an older woman who is sick, and what happens to both of them. So Jesus has just crossed the sea again. He's doing all this work around the Sea of Galilee, and he's going across the water because the crowds kind of get too big, so he kind of goes on. When he finds another set of crowds that meet him where they actually beat him around to the other side. So a great crowd gathers beside him again, and he is beside the sea. And then came to him one of the rulers of the synagogue. Now a synagogue was a gathering of Jews in any locality. Wherever you had 10 men, there you could have a synagogue, because that was enough to make what they considered to be a true gathering. It might have something to do with keeping the rabbi alive, because 10 men giving 10% of their salaries can afford to pay for one guy's salary, but I'm not sure that's actually right. I know it's true. I'm not sure it's what synagogue's about. That's kind of where the whole tithe and church thing comes in. If you have 10 family units that are giving 10% of their income, then you have no trouble whatsoever maintaining both a building and a pastor who's making, 80% of what the average medium income would be for those people. And then you got church, because all church is pastor, people, word, and sacrament. Anyway, not really the point. This ruler of the synagogue, this is one of the guys that's connected to the other guys that are like looking to destroy Jesus already. So he shouldn't be a friend of Jesus, but something's happening in his life that's causing him to think twice. His daughter is very, very sick. This ruler of the synagogue, Archisynagogan, comes to Jesus, and seeing him, he falls at his feet. Word there is pipte. It's not really a word that describes worship per se, but it does describe to fall down, to completely collapse. It's going to come back again later in the text, and there is this kind of hinting at, this guy gets something that not everyone else is getting. All these crowds are pressing around on Jesus, but nobody's falling at his feet. No one's proclaiming him the Son of God, right? They're not getting this, but this is almost like a hint. It's like a foreshadow. He falls down before him, and he implores him, he begs him, saying, my little daughter, my child, is at the point of death. Interesting little fact, the word death's going to come back later in the text, but here he doesn't use the word death, he uses the word eschaton, ending. My little girl is ending. She's at the end of her life. She's what? Well, we're going to find out. 12 years old. She's perishing. Come, lay your hands on her so that she can be made well and live. And Jesus concedes, and he goes with him. And so what does this mean? There's no and he had compassion on them. There's no teaching. There's no, oh, you have little faith. It's simply that he goes to heal this little girl. Pretty potent thing, actually, if you think about it. Can you know who Jesus is by what Jesus does? Does he turn his back on him? Does he say, no, you're part of the party that's trying to destroy me? No, Jesus, in fact, loves with the kind of love the world cannot know. A love which wants the good for all mankind, for every single person out there, and acts so as to make that possible. So he hears the plea, the cry for mercy, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, and he says, sure, that's what I came to do. As he goes, a great crowd continues to follow him, a throng of people. That's a cool word. Throng. And in that throng there was a woman who had had a, shall we say, discharge of blood, a flow of blood, and ladies, this is coming from the normal place that the monthly custom comes from, but this isn't like the monthly custom. This is like the monthly custom for 12 straight years with no stoppage. Ugh. And she had suffered much because of this. She'd gone to multiple physicians, and they're prodding and poking or doing whatever they did back then. And it's not like they were completely in the Dark Ages, but they didn't quite have dry quarters or anything. And so she's suffering a great deal to try to get this healed, to find out what's going on, and it's just getting worse. She's has this for 12 years, and it's progressively getting worse. Can you imagine in an age where all you have is cloth, walking around in public trying to deal with this? But she had heard reports about who Jesus is based on reports about what Jesus was doing. And she had said to herself, if I can get close enough to this man, because of who he is, because of the authority he wields, because of his purity, which changes the direction, that when he touches dirty things, he doesn't get dirty, but they get clean. If I can just brush against his cloak, the hem of his garment with my hand, then I will surely be made well myself. Now there's only one word to possibly describe this. This is faith. This is faith at its best. She doesn't know Jesus from Adam, per se, in one sense, but she has enough faith to know who he is by what he does. He is becoming an object for her faith. Now, this would be idolatry if this was being done to any other physician in this way. If she heard about a magician and ran after him and tried to get this man who practices dark arts to heal her, this would be idolatry, but it's not. This is actually the Son of God who has come into our world, and she recognizes it. We're going to hear as much from Jesus' mouth in a moment. So she reaches out, she touches his garment, and immediately, as if with great urgency, the flow of blood dries up. She ceases to discharge. And she could feel in her body, I mean, she felt it happen. You know, it's like in the movies where they have like the healing take place with magic, and it's like, and you like watch it change the face in front of you. Well, that's what happened, but it was inside her. It's like, whoa, I'm better. She could feel that she was healed of her disease. But Jesus also could feel that behind him, from his cloak, power, authority, purity had flown out of him as well. And so immediately he starts to turn about in this great crowd that's like pressing with him as they're moving forward. And he's like, who touched me? But his disciples are like, what do you mean who touched you? There's this huge crowd around you. They keep bumping into you. They're a bunch of jerks. I mean, what are you talking about, Jesus?
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
He just continues to look around to see who has done it. And the woman says this, and she knows what's happened, and she knows what he's saying, and she starts to actually feel a little bit guilty, because she kind of just, stole forgiveness, more or less, as if you could. But, that's kind of what happened. So, in faith again, knowing who Jesus is, hearing his words, she responds. She comes before him. She's afraid, because she doesn't quite understand the meaning of who Jesus is, that he is merciful. She only knows that he's powerful. But she comes before him in fear and trembling. Cool Greek word, tremusa, connected to tremors. She comes before him in fear and trembling, and prospipto, back to that word pipto, before him falls upon the ground, once again kneels before him in the position of worship, the position of degradation before the higher power. She kneels before him and tells him the entire truth. Lord, I heard about you, I knew that you were powerful, and I don't know how exactly, but here's my problem, and I just thought, if I can get near him, his purity will flow out onto me and I will be healed. And Jesus says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Oh, what a cruddy translation. It's the word sozo in the Greek. I mean, there's really only one meaning of that word. It's save. Your faith has saved you. And I know some of the Reformed and the translators don't want to confuse this with personal salvation, but it's like, why are you divorcing the organic unity of faith, what faith is and what it means for the Christian? Her faith saved her in the present and into the future. She believes in Jesus, and from this moment on, there's no doubt. She does, in fact, receive from Jesus the revelation of who he is. Do you think she's not going to listen to his preaching after this? I mean, jeez. Your faith has saved you. Go away in peace and wellness. What a strange thing. Ugees, health, the very thing which Jairus had asked for his daughter. Go away in peace and in wellness from your disease. Your disease has been removed. Now, if we take this and we say, see, Jesus just wants you to have health and wellness your whole life, we're really going to be missing the point. The point is ultimately not about her blood disease, but the impurity which that brings upon her, especially in their culture. For her to be bleeding like that meant she could never go near to God. She could not go worship at the temple. She was divorced from the community due to the uncleanness of her flow. And now, finally, she is able to be brought back into that community. She is restored to relationship with God. And so this is a huge, huge picture of sin and the forgiveness of sin. Not that the monthly custom of a woman is sin in and of itself. That's not the point. The point is that it's a type of sin, that it's a picture of sin according to the Levitical codes. And now, look, here's this man who has enough purity to overcome it. See, yeah? Now, while he's still speaking, some come from the ruler of the synagogue's house, Jairus' house, and they say, hate to break it to you, buddy, but your daughter's dead. And here's the word dead. Apathanen. So, since she's dead, don't trouble the teacher anymore. I mean, we know he does powerful things. I mean, apparently something just happened here that was kind of cool, but, dead is dead. I mean, no one comes back from the dead. But overhearing this, Jesus said to them, especially to Jairus, don't fear, believe. And he allowed no one else to follow him into the house. He strictly forbid. No one could come into the house except for Peter, James, John. Obviously, Jairus came with them. But even as they go in, there's a great commotion of people there. They're weeping, they're wailing. This is what you did when people die, because they at least just recognize what a horrible thing this is. Today we're like, oh, they're at peace, and then we like paint them with makeup and take out their insides and like use formaldehyde to make them, kind of fit in a coffin, and we're like, oh, don't they look so at rest? But see, back then at least they got it. No. The soul was just ripped from the body. The spiritual truth of humanity was just dissolved in chaos and decay. This is something to be completely tormented over, and they did. They let it out. They just kind of wailed and wept. And we keep it all inside, and it's like, man, how sick are we? But then Jesus actually kind of does a 180 on them and says, what are you making a commotion about? I mean, why are you weeping? The child's not dead. She's just asleep. And they're like, what? You moron?
What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Are you an idiot? You think we don't know what dead is? She's not asleep. Who are you? What are you thinking? He just put them all outside. He sat down beside the girl. He took her hand, and he said some of my very favorite words in the entire scripture from the Aramaic, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say, get up. Or, well, in the Greek, agero, rise. And immediately she anastasisized, she resurrected, she rose, she got up. And she began to walk around the house, being about a 12-year-old girl, not a baby. And everybody was beside themselves, literally, ex-istemi, standing beside themselves, or amazed, existentialized, brought out of their own heads, with a great amazement. Well, wonder why? The guy just raised somebody who was dead, yeah? Who the heck is this guy?
Truly this man was the Son of God.
And then he goes and he strictly charges them to tell nobody about this thing, as if the crowd outside ain't gonna figure it out. But he's like, give her something to eat, this whole rising from the dead thing, it takes it out of you a little bit, Gotta put those carbs back. Now, we're already out of time, but it's like, what do? You've seen this, you're observing this. Is it real? Is it true? I mean, how can you not be moved by this story? You're a callous person who obviously is a skeptic and thinks nothing of it. Or, holy moly, death has lost its sting prior to the time. Now, this is kind of driving us again somewhere. So what happens when this guy who can conquer death, this guy who by his touch can stop impurity, ends up hanging on a cross himself? What does that mean? How does that happen? I mean, if he can cast out legions of demons with the word and command the very heavens themselves to stop storming, how on earth does he allow for sinful men to nail him to a cross? See, that's then kind of the whole point. That's where this whole thing is going. He does, in fact, allow it because it is the payment for the sins of the world. It is the switch. It is the reversal. It is the taking of death into himself that conquers it permanently, not just temporarily as it was for this girl, but permanently. That woman, her flow of blood stopped, but she still died. The little Talitha, I mean, she grew up to be a woman and she died. When he rose from the dead, even bearing the scars, but yet perfected entirely of all the fruits of sin that we had put on him, he didn't die again. He'll never die again. He's reigning over the heavens and the earth right now. He's coming again to judge us with the gift of righteousness imputed to you by the word of his mouth, and to restore all of us then to a permanent, undying world. That's what all this is about, and if that bores you, well,
What you talking about, Willis?
repent, Right. Out of time. But it's been good seeing you this week. We'll catch you on Friday one more time before we disappear for 2 weeks for higher things. Anyhow, it is good to be your favorite YouTube addiction. Yes.
Talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Truly this man was the Son of